Thanks, Gordon. Now, the alleged onset of summer may be good news to most of us, but not if you're one of the 2 million Britons who suffer from allergic rhinitis, or hay fever, to use its more common name. This morning, the London Pollen Count Service gets underway, and they'll be providing daily information throughout the summer. Well, our reporter, Susanna Greenberg, has been finding out what methods they use to combat the pollen peril.
Some people will go to almost any length to outwit the enemy underfoot. To avoid spending the summer wheezing and sneezing, everything's worth a try. But there are others who prefer a more down-to-earth approach. Up on the roof at St Mary's Hospital in central London, every morning, come rain or shine, they'll be taking a pollen count. Scientific Officer Mike Savage uses a device called the Hurst spore trap. Any stray pollen is sucked onto a greased slide inside through a tiny orifice pointing into the wind. In just a few minutes, the slide is put under a microscope. The reading is taken and the forecast worked out and made available to the public. For hay fever sufferers, this is the main culprit, the grass pollen grain that gets right up your nose.
Our forecast is a combination of good weather forecasts from the Met Office and experience that we've had over the last 20 years. We tend to look at general trends. It also depends on the weather in April and May and the state of the flowering of the grass. But you put it all together and take it with a pinch of salt, and out comes a forecast.
Well, with some hints on how you can avoid hay fever, we're joined now by Dr. Robert Davies, who specialises in respiratory medicine at St Bartholomew Hospital. Good morning to you, Dr. Davies. Can you just explain the process then that happens, actually, before we go on to hints how to avoid it? The pollen sort of just lifts up into the sky and...
Yes, that's right. Well, it certainly goes up into the sky in the morning as the day warms up, yes. And then towards the evening returns to ground level, and it's at that time that the amount of pollen is at its maximum around the ground, and that's when you breathe it into your nose, and indeed further down sometimes into your lung to give you wheezing as well as allergic rhinitis.
So there is a worse time of day for it?
There is, that's right, in the late evening, or late afternoon really, early evening is the worst time.
Yeah, and what about parts of the country? Are there parts that are worse than others?
Yes, there are. Clearly it depends how much grass there is around, though in fact the pollen will get almost everywhere. But the further north you go, and the colder it is, the later the pollen season. The reverse happens, of course, if you go further south, down towards the Mediterranean. In general, you're slightly better off at the coast, where sea breezes keep the pollen grains inland, so that might help you.
I see. And you say that it starts later in the north and Scotland?
Yes.
Which means, what, the pollen count will start later?
Indeed, well, it will, that's right. A week or so later, really, for Scotland and here.
I see. Now, let's go through ways of making the best of a bad job, because presumably, I mean, you're not going to get rid of it too easily. What are your hints, then, to avoid it?
Well, I think there are several things you can do. First of all, as we've been mentioning, you can avoid going out in the late afternoon, early evening, when pollen grains are at their maximum. Certainly keep the windows closed in your bedroom and drive with the windows shut to prevent pollen getting into your car and hitting you. Sunglasses will help pollen grains getting into your eyes, and as I've just mentioned, it's possibly better to take holidays by the coast. But all in all, it's largely impossible to avoid the pollen grain, and you're going to need some medical treatment or other.
What about youngsters who are taking school exams? Because it's a dreadful handicap for them, isn't
Absolutely, it really is. And really it's at this age group, about the late teens, that allergic rhinitis is its most common. And I really feel that they do need treatment. And fortunately now, one of the backbones of treatment, if you like, that's the use of antihistamine drugs, has become very sophisticated, and it won't produce the drowsiness that usually we associate with these tablets. So there really is help available.
But, I mean, having said that, if they are likely to be handicapped, I mean, is there any way they can get sort of sympathy, or even it can be taken into account by the education authorities?
Well, I think you're right, and people have talked about changing the exam season, but I would stress that with proper treatment, starting just before the pollen season, so they don't even begin to get symptoms, we really can help these people and stop them having any problem at all.
OK, well, can I just tell you at home that anyone who wants to find out what the pollen count is, we have a couple of phone numbers for you to ring. For the London area, the number to phone is 01 261, that is not a direct line to Prince Philip either, it's 261 0110 or 246 8091. I'll just repeat those again, 261 0110 or 246 8091. And as I say, 01 if you're ringing from outside London. For the Midlands, it's Derby, the code 0332 362 461. Just say it again, 0332, that's the Derby code, 362 461. Right, thank you, Dr. Davies.
Thank you.
And to everyone at home suffering from hay fever, I hope it isn't too bad, and hopefully some of our hints will help. We'll take a break.